Walter White and Jesse Pinkman each had a total of 2 appearances in Better Call Saul Season 6, one on screen together and one on their own interacting with the character. Each of these appearances proved to not only be a service to the fans in bringing back 2 of Breaking Bad's characters, but they did it in a way that added value to the story that we were watching unfold and also contribute to the fate that was in store for Jimmy. So with that, I thought I'd explain why all of these scenes were so important. So let's get into it. Here is why every Walter White and Jesse Pinkman appearance was so important to Better Call Saul Season 6. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. With regards to the appearances that we had on screen, we had the first one being a joint appearance which contained both Walt and Jesse, which was a flashback to Season 2 Episode 8 of Breaking Bad. We had one that was set prior to the Breaking Bad timeline, where we had Kim engaging in conversation with Jesse, and the third and final one was a flashback to an encounter between both Saul and Walter. I'm going to break this video down into each of the different flashbacks and discuss their importance. Season 6, Episode 11, Walter and Jesse's appearance. The first appearance that we had in Better Call Saul was in Episode 11 of the show, and it contained both Walter White and Jesse Pinkman together. We witnessed this in the form of a flashback to the timeline of Breaking Bad. More specifically, the scenes that we didn't see when we watched Breaking Bad Season 2 Episode 8. We saw it at the time where Walt and Jesse had taken Saul and had him in front of a grave that was dug to intimidate him. This was done to get Saul to represent Badger with the aim of getting him out of jail and to also keep both Walt and Jesse's name in the clear. In Breaking Bad, we saw both Walt and Jesse place $1 inside of Saul's pocket, which in that moment was the start of their relationship, as it entitled them to attorney-client privilege. We saw Saul's first true interaction with Heisenberg taking place in the RV, the place where all of the trouble started way back in Season 1 of Breaking Bad. This inclusion came at an important part in the episode that we were watching. We'd just come off the back of Episode 10, where we'd seen Gene test the water and get a taste of what it was like to be the cunning conman and schemer that he was familiar with, after laying low as Gene Tarkovic. And this flashback that contained the pair of them occurred after he'd completed the theft of an individual's identity, where he upped the ante, the risk level, and took it to the next level. We were seeing Gene retouch with a part of his life that he'd left behind, but he'd now started this lifestyle again in the present day timeline. Seeing the moment that he met Walter and Jesse properly in the flashback supported the narrative and meant that this was the start of a downward spiral for Gene, and it would be hard to get back from it. Season 6, Episode 12, Jesse encountered Kim. The second time we had an appearance from one of them was when Jesse appeared on screen in a one-on-one conversation with Kim. This occurred shortly after we hit a flashback scene to the timeline just before Breaking Bad began. We know this because Emilio got off of 2 charges when Saul represented him, and it was clear in this scene that he didn't recognize him. We just witnessed Kim and Jimmy sign their divorce papers, where it was clear to see that Kim was definitely more emotionally attached to the act of doing it when compared to how Jimmy was reacting, or at least letting on. At the start of the episode, we saw him acting nervous to see Kim, as it would have been a while since they last saw each other. But when she entered, he wasn't making eye contact with her, was interrupting her when she was about to elaborate on why she chose Florida to set up her new life, and he was also relatively rude. That was definitely his way of dealing with what was going on. He was putting up a front, like he always does. We had moments of silence and close-ups of Kim's face where we saw thoughts pondering round in her mind, almost questioning if the man that was sitting right in front of her was the person that she'd spent the past few years of her life with and was married to. He was a completely different person to how he usually acted with her. After she left, we saw her outside the front of his office, where we saw that she then encountered Jesse. A lot of the conversation was focused on the familiarity of how he recognized her as a lawyer, and that she got combo off of a charge a while back. But the main meaning and purpose of Jesse being there was to support the idea and cement the fact that Kim didn't recognize Jimmy anymore. Jesse wanted to know if Saul was a good lawyer, and asked the question, "Is he any good?" And Kim stated he was when I knew him. I think this meant 2 different things. One being the answer to the question around if he genuinely was a good lawyer, but I think its main meaning was that she just doesn't recognize him anymore. How he's changed since they haven't been together, and despite the fact that he wasn't that good of a person when they were together, she was now on the receiving end of the brunt of it and knew what it felt like, which enabled her to see him with different eyes. Without this conversation, we wouldn't have got the vocalized version of Kim accepting and understanding that Jimmy had changed and that he wasn't good anymore. Season 6, Episode 13, Walter and Saul. The final appearance from either of the two characters came in the show's finale, and it felt rather fitting that it was a conversation between Walter White and Jimmy, the two main characters of each show. Throughout the season finale of the show, we saw that regrets and reconciliation were two of the main focal points of the episode. It started at the very beginning of the episode with Mike, when Jimmy asked him what he would do if he had a time machine, and we saw the exact same conversation unfold when he asked it to Walter. Rather than fluffing around the point with the idea of a time machine, he put the question of what would you go back and change to him. We witnessed Walter mention how if he could change one thing, he would have stayed at the company that himself, Elliot, and Gretchen made, as it would have changed his life drastically. And he wouldn't have ended up where he currently was with Jimmy and in the mess that they were in. It would have changed the trajectory of his life completely, something that held great importance. When the question was put back to Jimmy, we saw him struggle to think of something that he would go back and change. But he did gradually say something. He said that he'd go back to a slip and fall that he did in his early 20s when he went down too hard and damaged his knee, to the point where it was never the same after that moment, something that held little significance. We heard Walt then state, "So you were always like this then?" It was a statement that said so much without saying much at all. It showed the fact that Jimmy didn't have anything of great importance to regret in his life, or at least more so showed that he wasn't prepared to vocalize it, which would ultimately allow his guard to be let down. But more importantly, it showed that he was always destined to be in the situation that he found himself in. There was never an alternative lifestyle for him, because he was always doing it. This scene matched with the demise of the character in the present day, and the fact that he didn't face his fears and open up about all that he regretted until he was on the stand as Gene, allowed it to be delivered with a lot more impact than what it would have done without, as we saw that it had been something that he'd struggled to face even when the question was put to him many years ago. It was great seeing both Walter White and Jesse Pinkman together on screen for the first time in what felt like a long while, and especially interacting with characters such as Kim, as it was something that we didn't think we'd ever see. The appearances, despite being flashbacks, did provide weight, originality, a different perspective, and value to the story that we were watching, and in turn, strengthened the end result. So, there you have it, why every Walter White and Jesse Pinkman appearance was important to Better Call Saul Season 6. If you want to see more videos on Better Call Saul such as endings explained, theories and predictions, and character breakdowns, then click on the I button. Or alternatively, you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. If you want to give me a show or movie that you'd like me to review next, then head over to my Twitter, @brainpilot_, and tweet me what show or movie you'd like me to review. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What did you think of their appearances? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.